Missed the button. Hey there, everyone. It's Lindsay Lapaquette from Collaborative Solutions, and thanks again for joining us again on Live with Lindsay. I apologize for being a few minutes late. I've been having a little bit of internet trouble all day, although it seems to work fine for my kids' video games, but for working, it kept cutting out. Of course, it's just always the way. And so just took us a second to get the internet back up and running. But tonight, we're going to be joined by Virginia Lauzon, who is an entrepreneur, activist, and coach. And we're going to be talking about ditching burnout culture in the workplace, which has always been an important topic, but I think a lot more people are finding they're kind of getting to that verge of burnout or experiencing burnout with all the stress that everyone is under through the pandemic. And so if that describes you, if you're finding yourself feeling more burned out than usual, wondering what you can do differently, how you can make sure that you are not going further into whether it's that you're already in a state of burnout or towards a burnout, then today's topic is for you. So I'll bring Virginia in just a second. In the meantime, I'd love it if you could all let us know where you're watching from. I'll open the chat and just introduce yourself. Let us know you're here, where you're watching from. And as we're going on, certainly share your questions and concerns that you're dealing with Virginia. And now's your chance to pick her brain while she's here with us. So Virginia Lauzon is a serial entrepreneur, self-advocate, and business coach from Montreal with a desire to build communities, inspire integrity, and elevate the way we do business and life. She's an emotional intelligence expert, a worthiness activist, a global wellness retreat facilitator, and a proud twice exceptional 2E woman. So with that, I will bring Virginia in. Hey there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. You?
Wonderful. I was so excited for tonight's live. I could barely keep my eyes shut for the night before.
Well, I'm excited to get to speak with you. We didn't get much chance to catch up before, so I'm looking forward to hearing what's going on with you and talking about this issue of burnout culture, because I do think it goes beyond the individual. You know, we live in a society where I feel like there's a lot of encouragement to participate in behaviors that ultimately contribute to burnout. So I'd love to start off just by asking you a little bit, your journey with this. I'm not asking you specifically, have you ever experienced a burnout, of course, but what is it that has brought you to this being an important topic for you?
Well, as you just mentioned, it is a very big component of our culture, and we tend to really reward any behavior that pretty much leads many of us to either being on the verge of burnout or burning out. It's kind of like this milestone of success, performance, and achievement to be burned out. It's, I had a burnout in this year, and my friend burned out in 2006, and my mother burned out in it's this thing where we all know someone or know of someone who has burnt out, and it's kind of like a walk in the park or going to the dentist. And it really puzzles me because this is mental and emotional health that we're talking about, and the workplace should, in my humble opinion, be a place where we can evolve, grow, and become, and still remain emotionally and mentally sane. And I see a lot of glitches in the way that we communicate, in the way that we perceive ourselves, and just the equations that we have in our heads that this means success, and this is performance, and this is achievement. Therefore, I'm important and I'm valid in the workplace. Do we really need to go that route, or is there another healthier way?
I think your point there about how many people know who have experienced burnout is super valid. And I'd love to hear from those watching if that resonated with you, because as you said that, I was kind of reeling through my, of course, memory of people who have disclosed that to me. And let's be honest, there's probably lots of other people around me who have experienced it, who have never disclosed that to me, and highly numerous. I mean, I remember at one point in my very first job, there were 10 of us in the same position. And I think at one point, 4 or 5 of the 10 were on a burnout leave. That was my introduction to what burnout was, in my early 20s as I was graduating. Progressively, more and more people on the team were leaving on burnout. That's a huge proportion, and that was 15 years ago. So I think, rates of mental health have increased over time. So I would guess that's even higher today with the pressure that a lot of people are under.
Absolutely. And when we were talking, you and I, about 2020 and how, the new normal of COVID, it's like burnout is the new normal of being successful. And it's a badge of honor. Like, I worked and sacrificed so much of myself to be where I am. And it really, really breaks my heart because I really do not want that to be my present, my future. And I'm not talking about burnout as if that's a failure. It really is not. I think it's a human thing. And in the society that we live in, it's very difficult to avoid that. Well, we'll be talking about solutions and prevention, but even just, I think all of us have experienced it near or far, or just this sensation that we're about to slip. Some of us just catch it there, but it's so easy to just slide into it. And then it's too late. It feels like it's too late. And it really can feel like a very hopeless time. But just conversations that I hear when I'm at the grocery store, or I'm back in the day where we would go to restaurants or cafes. And since I'm twice exceptional, I have I can hear things like a wild animal, and I hear things miles away. So I eavesdrop without even trying, because it's right in there. And I just hear people say, oh, my burnout, and last year I'm all burned out, and this job now I can't stand my manager anymore, and I'm so tired and I'm exhausted, and the kids, and it never stops. I'm like, this is everything. And I hear this everywhere I go. My first introduction to burnout, I was maybe 4 years old, and one of my friends in kindergarten, their mom had just, went on a leave from work because of a burnout. I'm like, what's a burnout? It starts so young. We're introduced to this concept of working our butts off. Just the expression on its own, it's problematic.
Yeah. So before I reply to that, I just have to point out how just it stood out to me so much when you said back in the day when we used to go to restaurants, and I thought, wow, we're there.
We're there.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, we used to go outside.
That really stood out at me because it just, I just went past it because it was so normal, right? To say back in the day when we used to go out and see people. But so that aside, that was a little bit of a tangent there. But back to that notion of burnout, it has become really normalized, right? And so I'm not sure if I had seen it to the extent that you're describing it here, but I can see where there's so much truth in that, because there is almost a pride that is worn with, being so busy. And I feel like I'm somebody so I've never sort of officially experienced a burnout, but I've had moments in my life, I think, where had I not had other things happen, I probably would have ended up on a burnout. So I had a really significant physical injury that put me off of work. And when I slowed down, I think that was my body's way of a burnout, right? Looking at what my life was like at that time, I feel like had I not gotten injured, I probably would have ended up in a burnout, because that forced me to slow down. And so I haven't, sort of officially experienced it, but I think I've kind of been on the verge of it, and I have to watch myself because it's the way we've all been socialized, right? It's the way I was raised. It's the way the messages in society. Look, when COVID hit, right? All these memes about how you need to be productive, and if you don't learn a new skill, and in my gut, I knew it was wrong, and yet I was still struggling with my own feelings because I chose to take some time to process it, but was still struggling with my own feelings around worthiness for not buying into those messages, even though I don't actually buy in. There's stuff there to work through from the messaging and programming that I've, had, and I've been aware of this for years. And so I guess one of the things I'd like to touch on is, so I think one of the things that helps me is I've developed over the years an awareness of when things are getting too much and when I need to take a step back, and for someone who's not sure doesn't know, they know they're overwhelmed. They know they're really stressed. They know they have a lot on their plate, but they're not sure, is this just busy life stress? Am I heading towards a burnout? Where's that line? What are some of the things they can be looking at in their lives, some of the symptoms maybe that they need to start watching for and registering, I guess?
That's a fantastic question. And I want to thank you for sharing your experience of, I call it flirting with the world of burnout, because I flirted with it many, many times, being someone who's really creative and just cannot stop with projects and ideas, and you just want to do. You're always in the do, and you forget that you can just be.
Yeah.
So those are things that are very important. However, when we think of, some of the symptoms, I know that in my life, I love what you said about the self-awareness. I think that is a big, big, big component, not just of emotional intelligence, emotional wellness, and burnout prevention. It's irritability. Irritability is a big one, and it showed up for me a lot this year as I was incorporating my first company and launching 4 businesses simultaneously, which for a lot of people is like, you're a workaholic. Oh, no, I'm just like almost on the spectrum of autism. So I'm always, ding, 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 bling, bling, bling. But that it requires an awareness of, have I slept today? Like, have I eaten? Why am I snapping all the time?
Yeah.
I'm reactive. I'm very reactive. And the mindfulness and taking the time to just analyze how we feel about certain things, we're rushing through life. That is a big symptom where you feel you don't have time to breathe. And when you're reading all those memes about, having 50 things on your to-do list and you're never going to sleep, and you're like, haha, that's me. That dark humor, when the dark humor kicks in and everything you see that's dark humor and sarcastic feels like your reality. And it's always sad. It's always super intense. Like, okay. And when you're like, oh, I would need a month off, not a day off, a month off, ask yourself, that rhythm, is that sustainable?
Yeah.
The irritability is a big sign.
Yeah, I think you've shared a lot of good points. And I think for me too, that irritability for years was something that was just sort of there on the surface, because and granted, I'd let it come out more with certain people than with others, of course, because we've been socialized where it's safe to do that and where not to, but that's not okay in and of itself. Not that, I'm not judging anyone who's in that. I still do that, but it's a sign, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it became the marker. So as my mom and uncle died, actually just almost 6 years ago, exactly, in a car accident. So my irritability just shot through the roof overnight, right? Like I couldn't tolerate, any negativity, any demands, anybody asking me for things. I just, my focus was getting through the day and keeping myself tended to, I guess, for lack of a better word. And my gauge was always my irritability as I was trying to, decide, am I going back to work now or am I staying off? Am I going to say yes to this invite to coffee with a friend or am I not? I would do things and watch after. And if I was crankier after, and had that low grade irritability, that was my sign of, that wasn't really nourishing to you. Because I think we skip over that irritability a lot as normal. Well, I'm busy. Of course I'm stressed.
Yes. And you just really sparked something in me right now when you speak about normalizing, how we normalize burnout and we normalize being irritable and snappy, and how there's this lack of self-awareness and also lack of boundaries. And I'm the first guilty person of when I'm in those over-excitability moments, which for some, it shows up in highs, like when you're on a high on life, you're high on life and you're just do. Well, I tend to say yes to a lot of things. And the boundaries where are the boundaries? Where are the boundaries? And then when other people set boundaries, you're like, what? Why? What's going on? You don't understand it. So it's so important to understand and see and perceive that boundaries are a love language on their own. Boundaries, they will keep you sane, safe, and like alive.
Mhm.
And in the workplace as well. Uh, Normalizing has a good side and has a very detrimental side because it removes a lot of the stigma around those things. But the issue is that people think it's kind of like you can't avoid it. You just have to go through it. And it is what it is. And that mindset is really harmful because no, it's not what it is. There is a way, and I'm not there wishful thinking. There is a way to be happy, fulfilled, and do things that are fulfilling, passion wise, emotionally, intellectually, that stimulate you. You can make a living, a great living, without reaching a point where you are sick and tired of everything and you're so saturated you can't even say hello in the morning.
Yeah.
And speaking of being cranky, I've noticed that when I'm tired physically and I avoid that,
yes,
I'm like, oh, it's 2 and I'm exhausted because I woke up at 5 because I was excited about something. And I'm like, I'm going to go like coffee.
Right.
Why am I not listening? Why am I not paying attention to, hey, oh, because it's 2 and I'm a CEO and
right.
Everybody sleeps. Like, this is not, you don't need to have a certain lifestyle to earn sleep.
Yeah.
You
That
deserve
huge.
sleep now. Yeah, that's a big one for me.
It is for me too. And I have to admit, it's one that I struggle on and off. So I say to prioritize. I get a decent amount of sleep, but I'm somebody who really needs 9 to 10 hours to be like really at my top game. And I don't get that consistently. I consistently get at least 7, but I function much better on 9 to 10. And I see the difference if we're going through a phase where the kids are waking up, or I have, I used to travel a lot for work. I'd be getting up at 5:30. It's immediately I see that impact on my irritability. And then what you're saying, to link it to burnout, is when there's an accumulation of that for too long, that's when it starts to get, for me, I can only speak from my own perspective, but where there's no space. So I think that misconception around, well, trying to step away from this means I'm not going to try hard and I'm not going to do anything and I'm just going to lay in bed resting all day, and it's a very black and white way of looking at things.
It is.
It doesn't have to be I work myself to the bone or I'm on vacation and without a care in the world, right? But I think we can have that middle ground. And part of my journey this year particularly has been realizing that as I worked hard to step out of those situations, I now somewhat avoid them too much, right? And that part of, for me, that balance too is allowing you those phases of high stress when it's needed, when there's great benefit to it, but being aware enough to put boundaries around how long I'll do it for, how much, what I incorporate in my life to manage it, what else I let go to kind of counter. And that's still a journey, I think, that I'm on. So I just want to interrupt real quick because there's a few people watching we haven't said hi to. I just want to apologize for not joining you guys in yet. I don't know if you're still here. Hope you've waited, even though I did read you were here. So Anna is here watching. David's here from Bellevue and Washington, and Jeannie's here from Sassavie. So hi, and thanks to everyone. If there's anyone else watching, I'd love to hear where you're from. If you do have any questions, comments for Virginia about burnout and this whole culture of, performance above and beyond all else, I'd love it if you would share those, and you have a chance here to ask Virginia whatever questions you have. One thing that I'd wanted to ask you in going through this is, in terms of being busy and productive all of the time, what is it that's going on under the surface? What is it? So, okay, there's society's expectations that have been internalized and all that. But beyond that, within the individual, what's often going on that's driving people to, keep up this pattern despite the exhaustion, despite the stress? Because often they are expressing just how exhausted they are, but the patterns continue.
Absolutely. I'll just speak for myself and for some of my clients who share my patterns, and I in hopes that this resonates. Perfectionism is a big one. I grew up in a perfectionistic household with incredible parents who are also um, on the gifted spectrum. So we're all very unique individuals who are very creative and very passionate, and we just pursue things. That's what we do. We pursue what we want, and we get it done. And there was space for errors on in the way that I was raised. So if I made mistakes or if I failed at something, I was very supported in that, and I was loved. I didn't love myself. I did not accept failures. I did not accept a 90% on a test. I did not accept a B plus, and I did not accept any relationship failing or changing and transitioning. It was very difficult for me growing up to allow for myself to be human. And it still shows up for me at 29 years old, and it's probably going to show up for me at 35 and 45. Doing the work of self-forgiveness and self-compassion has really helped in the healing process, but it's not overnight. And it's a lot of trauma becoming triumph. It's very, very crucial for me to take moments in my day where I am myself and I'm not doing anything productive, and I'm not launching a business, and I'm not doing something extra fabulous or innovative or inspiring. I need moments where I'm just not inspirational. What can I say? I don't even inspire myself. I don't do anything inspiring. I'm just on my couch. I'm staring at the wall, and I need to do that because I'm hyper stimulated all the time. And when you said you need 9 or 10 hours of sleep, I desperately need that, because when I'm on, I'm freaking on. Yeah. I need to be freaking off as well. That balance is very important.
Well, it's like, physical health. When I think of, back in the days when I used to go to the gym, although I do work out at home now instead, because that's one of my ways back in the day. But you need those physical recovery days, right? Like to optimally grow your muscles, you need time to let the muscle fibers heal. And it's sort of the same notion, I think, in terms of our mental health, giving space for that. We have days here with the kids where we don't get dressed. We don't, especially in the beginning, middle of the pandemic. I mean, we do that. That's kind of our regular routine. We have really low key weekends and we all love them. But especially as the pandemic was, really fresh and stressful, our energy was low, right? Getting through your work week, and you have to still be semi on, but that was taking a lot more out of us than it normally did. And so we would just stay in our pajamas, hang out, play board games, I couldn't even tell you by the end of the day. Some days I'd be like, what did we even do today? Like maybe we played a round of Monopoly, but like, where did our time actually go? But
no idea.
Kind of doesn't matter, because it's what we all kind of needed to just be able to start back on Monday refreshed and not be cranky with the kids all weekend. Like if I was trying to paint the house, I just knew my energy, I could have forced myself to do it, but the repercussions on our family life and probably on me then next to the work, back to the next work week would not have been ideal. But one thing you said that I'd really like to touch on a bit, because I think it's kind of misunderstood with the notion of burnout, is, you were talking about that really inspired action and being really engaged in things. And I feel like people don't see that as an element of burnout, right? I feel like people see burnout as the after effects of that, which is, having a hard time getting motivated and getting going. And so I feel like there's not necessarily even an awareness how much being on all the time isn't sustainable. So can you speak a bit around, I guess that spectrum of burnout and what the signs are? Because I think it goes through different phases.
Absolutely. And it looks different for every single person, depending on, are they neurotypical or neurodiverse? Are they from a culture or like epigenetics or family environment that is, very strict and very, there's a lot of structure and there's a lot of expectations. It will really change. And I see a lot of people in my surroundings, in my network, that you would think they're burned out because it's just not sustainable. and they're doing fantastic, and they
Right.
meditate, and they wake up at 4, and they have their practice and their rituals, and then we don't see their naps, and we don't see when they sleep, but they probably fall asleep at airports, and they're super happy.
Mm.
And then if you put me in that situation, I'll be burnt out in 24 hours, because it's
Right.
just really depends. So if we take the example of you and I, we love to speak. For me, doing this live tonight does not feel like a professional commitment. It just feels like a really fun time with you. It's natural for me. This is relaxing, and it feels so good. It's nourishing for me to be here. You know
Same
that
for
already,
me.
but I just want to validate. If you ask me to fill out a form, and I have to fill out forms every day for a month, we'll probably be doing another live on how I survived the burnout after
I'm with
signing
you.
and filling out forms, because that's something that drains the life out of me. One form, 1 month recovery.
Yeah. And I think knowing that, right? So what I was doing before this live, I mean, I had some dinner and some time with the kids, but I have a client that I'm working on developing sort of personalized like training videos for, and I'm the part of filming them and all that is really easy for me, the talking part, but the organizing them and getting them uploaded and all that piece, I hate that piece. And I do have support in my business for it, but just right now other people are in other projects, and I was doing some of it, and I did it for about 3 hours, and I was thinking, okay, I can't do this tomorrow, right? Tomorrow I need to do something else that's stimulating and creative, because it drains so much from me,
Yes.
and I need that balance in my day. Or what happens is, if I force myself to do it again tomorrow, I'll do it for 3 hours, and I'll actually get like half an hour or an hour's worth of work done.
That's it.
So
You do need some positive reinforcement. And, just the example of forms. A lot of these things were not interpreted very positively growing up, because I was seeing at some teachers or some people in my life, like, you're lazy, you procrastinate a
right.
lot. No. I can launch a few businesses if you want, and I can give you the speech right here and there, and we can, do business coaching for 12 hours in a row, and, maybe I'll go for a tea break, but that's it. A form, reading something super dry that I have no passion in, I will procrastinate for 5 months because it's so damn dry for me. And what I do now is, first, delegating has saved my life. Delegate what's not your zone of genius, because you think it's an expense, but no, you're investing in your mental health for the rest of your life, and it's going to give you so much peace. My relationships have bloomed ever since I started delegating. And no joke, my mom is watching right now. It's Anna, and she will sit next to me when I have to fill out a form. I've had to fill out 3 forms, and it's been a week. She knows. I told her, like, this is not for my assistant. This is not for my virtual assistant either. This is my mom and I have this deal, is that when there's a form, she will rock by my side. We'll have a decaf latte with oat milk. It's a ritual. And then we're going to watch a movie after, and we're going to go for a massage that week. Like, it's a real thing. It's like, it terrifies me. I really can't stand forms. She's like, you've got this, girl. We're going to do it one step at a time. And I need to be cheered on for a form. When some people look at me like, Virginia, are you serious?
Some people
You're
love
almost
that.
30.
But some people love that, right? So to get back to your whole point of delegating, there are people who
love that.
Love it, right? And frankly, are way better at the things that I am not as good at. And so I too have learned that let them do what they're amazing at, instead of trying to pretend that I, like it and I'm good at it, and taking 10 times as long, get somebody else to do it. It's really energy management, I guess, at the base of it, what you're talking about.
It is. It's energy management. It's the self-awareness, and also managing your expectations. If I am here judging myself because I'm like, I should be able to fill out a form because I'm educated and I have a bachelor's of law, it has nothing to do. I could have a bachelor's and I could be a doctor and still not want to fill out a form. It is like, it's just my reality, and I could spend the next 20 years suffering in front of a form, or I can delegate and then do really wonderful things with my life that make sense to me. And by the time I'm figuring out whether I like forms or not, somebody else filled it out for me, and I'm happy.
Yeah. So I'm
And we
just going
have
to
dinner on the table.
yeah, no kidding. So I'm just going to pop into the comments here for a second. Kathleen's watching from the Franklin Center in Quebec. Nasruddin is saying that he's enjoying the conversation. So thanks for joining us. And like I said, if anyone has any questions here for Virginia about burnout or managing stress and how to deal with all this in the workplace, by all means, pop your question into the chat here. And I did have something I wanted to say in response to that, but it has now left my head. So as I wait for that to come back, maybe what we can talk about is what I just touched on, is in terms of, how to navigate this in the workplace, because it's a tricky thing to navigate depending on who you work for and who your boss is and what the philosophy and the culture is. But I think that especially nowadays, there is such a need to do it. I'm just writing down the other thing I wanted to ask about. I think there's such a need to do it to prevent burnout and to protect our mental health, because it's clear that this pandemic is not going to be over tomorrow, as much as we would all like to go back to the good old days. So, how do you, if you're feeling like you need to make some changes at work, what are some of the first steps people can try?
Well, it's something that you do so well and that you coach a lot of people with. It's stress-free communication. Understanding the basics of stress-free communication is so important, because most of the time when you enter a new workforce or just a new work environment, you can smell the burnout in the air. You can smell the burnout culture. You just step into the office or, the Zoom call, and you're like, everybody's tense. Their faces are so, they're blasé, they're tired. The tone in which things are said or asked. For some of my experiences where I felt very micromanaged, you can smell it within a week or two. You know that you're like, oh, okay, I have to speed it up. I just got here, but it's already very overwhelming, and you just have to move your life around, and you just overtime, and then you take work home, and you're thinking about work all the time, and you look at your colleagues, and they're just not zen at all. Zen is just not there. It's not in the building. Well, communicating clearly and understanding the expectations of the job and the role, and having clear boundaries from the get-go is crucial. Yeah. If you see that you have, let's say, an example is appointments every Monday with the team at 9, and your boss never shows up, and you're just there left hanging because the boss is busy and he or she doesn't have time to be there. So nobody knows what they're doing. And then there's some, oh, why weren't you there? Or why didn't you do this? A lot of, the complaints. You feel disrespected. You just don't feel good. It's time to set the boundaries when you start feeling the kind of disalignment or the disrespect, or that you just feel yucky. Yeah. When it starts, address it. And there are wonderful ways to do so, and to, use expressions such as, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I want to make sure that the expectations are clear so that I can provide the best work, and have those type of catchphrases, if you'd say, or have those statements written down so that you can write really respectful emails, or you can have face-to-face conversations with the people that you work with. Because when you let miscommunication roll, it becomes a huge ball of fire, and it's messy. And burnout becomes almost unavoidable because you just don't know how to get out of the stickiness of it.
It gets so deep, And I know that, because of what I do for work, that I obviously agree with everything you've said, since my area is communication. And so I won't go too much further with that. But I think that part that you're saying about addressing it early on is so key, because the more it goes unaddressed, I often describe it not necessarily in relation to burnout, but in relation to communication issues that go unaddressed, is that it's like an onion, right? And then when it's gone on forever, you have to peel away all the layers before you actually get down to the thing that needed to be talked about, a year ago, but now has built up into all these other stressors and resentment and dynamics. And it just gets to be a huge ball of wax. Not to say that you can't still undo that, but I think it's much easier to do it early on. And one of the things you talked about was feeling it in other people in the room, which I think you can become more accustomed to being able to pick up if that's something you are not used to now. I think you can also feel it in your own body. And even so, as I was saying to you, I was doing these videos earlier today, and I had filmed them over, a series of weeks, I suppose. And as I was uploading them, I could see in myself, there were some that I was like, whoa, you look really tired here. And I was thinking back, I wonder what week was that? What was going on? Maybe it was when we were just starting homeschooling the kids. I don't know. I didn't go that far in my reflection process, but I could see the difference in my animation in my face. I was having a hard time finding a thumbnail where I looked like happy and engaged because I was just more tired, which doesn't mean it was necessarily burnout, but there's signs in your own body. That's my whole point, right? Is that those signs were there. Did I notice it in the moment or not? I don't know. But I think the more we can get in tune with picking that up in our own body, and I know for me, because I also have a tendency to be very invested and excited about things. And so sometimes I don't notice it in my body in the moment because it is a stressor, but it's not a, oh my God, I hate this, I can't do this stressor necessarily. It's just, I'm in this state of adrenaline for a longer period than is good for me. And sometimes when I sit down to meditate or I do like a calmer workout, that's when all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, my jaw is so tense, my neck, my shoulders,
Yes.
and it's in our bodies, right?
Our body speaks volumes, and it's, as you say, sometimes it's hard to see. Is it excitability or passion or just like being excited, or is it like deep, dark stress? And you can really see it in, your facial expressions. If you look at yourself in the morning and you just look so tired and drained, the word drained is a really good one to use when asking yourself, am I, getting closer to burnout, or am I in a stable zone? And when you're constantly drained, and sometimes it's really small things that you think are not important or relevant, those are the things that add up. So to pay close attention to those things is important.
Yeah, I think especially those little things. So when I think back to the times in my life where I've been, closer to empty than I am today, some of those phases were like as our kids were getting diagnosed with their special needs, and it was just a really tough, chaotic period. And it was like little things would irritate me so much, and so it's watching that too, I think, right? I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, but so I remember the example that I remember went right after my mom and uncle died. I went into the grocery store and there was a woman just tearing a strip off of the cashier. She was screaming at her. And the minute I walked into the pharmacy, I could hear her at the cash just screaming because they didn't have her mascara in the color she wanted. And it was this huge juxtaposition for me, who had just lost family in a car accident, in this moment of,
like, are you serious?
Mascara. But what I took from that was, wow, there's something else going on in her life, right? If she is this upset over mascara, because maybe that would have been about mascara, but really about the accident,
Exactly.
And so when we're having that irritability around the small things, kind of watching and questioning, what's going on with me? Why am I so upset about mascara?
Empathy is very important, and validating, verifying, and I speak especially about relationships, because a lot of friendships and relationships end because of misunderstanding. Because the person is going through the roughest time in their life and they just don't show up in the same way, or they don't show up at all. And that can happen in the workplace. Well, let's inquire and let's check on the people that we love and care about and say, hey, you don't seem like yourself. Is everything okay? And that could be just such a life-changing question, and a non-judgmental one to say, hey, I'm sensing something. Is everything all right? How can I support you right now? And they don't need to disclose anything, but just noticing that there's a vibe. And there is a really wonderful question in the chat. I don't know if we have time to address it.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and read it?
Yes, David James, we need to watch out to avoid places where there is micromanagement. It can be difficult to detect this in a job interview. Any thoughts on how to figure this out before accepting the job offer? That's a fantastic question, David. And fantastic question. One of the things that I look at is I go on the website, I go on the social media, and I look at the faces and I look at the values and how things are written. And I really look at the experience and the vibe that I get. So are we speaking about an inclusive workplace, such like keywords, accessibility? Are we talking about, integrity. And sometimes you'll notice that the words don't really match the environment once you're in it. That can
That's what I was
happen,
just
that
going to
there's a
ask.
clash. That can happen. I love to look at, who's managing, who's the CEO, who's the founder, especially who is managing, because there is a difference between the person who is founding or starting a business or who is really the president and the people who will manage you daily. Pay attention to certain things. Look at how you feel when you enter the room. Look at how you feel. The emails that are sent, how are they written? Do you feel welcome? Do you feel accepted? And do you feel valued? If you feel that this is really not, you're getting an icky vibe, but you see that there is a good salary, that there is, you have benefits and it's close to home, and ask yourself, if you have an intuition, if you have something in your gut saying, I feel this is just going to be a kick in the knee, or this is going to, you have a pit in your stomach, you don't feel that you belong there. Trust that. Trust it. Trust also, how are the colleagues welcoming you? Often it's just, it's not compatible, because you can be in a workplace where everybody gets along and you're just like, I really don't belong here. This is really not for me. This is not for me. I don't get along with anybody here. I don't see eye to eye. My ideas are not welcome. My creativity and my expression is really not welcome. I don't have any creative freedom or any leadership. Or ask yourself also what you need. What do you need? Because it can clash, and that's okay. The earlier you spot it, it requires courage, but you will be better off, because a toxic work environment, it stays in the body for a while, even after you're gone. Yeah. So pay attention to that. Ask yourself, is it worth it?
Yeah. I really like the way you explained that, or that you replied, because I think we do often have that intuition around it, but we just don't necessarily trust it, or we justify it, or we explain it away, and that happens to me. I teach all around communication, and I still have interactions with people where I just have this feeling, but because I can't rationally explain why I have that feeling, I question myself. And I think I just had an interaction with somebody yesterday who was very kind, but did not substituted their opinions for mine. But they were very kind and friendly. And so it left me with this conflicted feeling. And, I had that intuition right off within the first 10 or so minutes, but, sometimes it takes a while to get to that rational understanding of it, but I don't think we necessarily need that, right? Because that instinct is there.
To trust the instinct is a really great lesson that I learned recently, very recently, to just trust my emotional intelligence and to trust my instincts. And we do tend to rationalize. We need to rationalize things in order for them to make sense and for them to be valid. And I truly believe, in my eyes, it is a mistake that we're doing, because we don't trust our gut, and it's out of curiosity. We just want to see how things are going to unfold, and we want to trick ourselves into thinking, no, you're just being too harsh, or you're being judgmental, or
we take it on ourselves.
Yeah, it's our fault.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just very intuitive, and maybe you know who you are. What about that?
Right. I love that. So David's saying thank you for your thoughtful answers. I just want to go here. So Anna here is sharing that knowing yourself and accepting you as you are, this is the clue in order to recognize when things are not going well. Yeah, I love that. Because I think that's so key, because, what I might say is my sign or works for me, you might say to me, it was what you were talking about earlier, right? About how looking from the outside, someone who looks like they'd be in a burnout or not, because they know how they feel and they know what they need, versus somebody who might have that same external situation who isn't in touch with that and maybe in a different situation. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So I'll just give everyone one last minute if you have any further questions for Virginia, anything related to burnout and stress management. I know we're in a trying time right now, and I think now more than ever, it's crucial for this to be the foundation of everything. For me, as the pandemic hit, just became very clear to me that the name of the game was survival. And what I mean by that is taking care of, us as people and within our family, and making sure that we were all doing as well as possible in order to be able to manage the rest. And I think I get the sense from others that this pandemic has been a wake-up call for many in that regard too. So I hope that that's bringing some good into people's lives, despite, I know, all the process of it has been challenging. Just going to go in here. So Anna's saying, when your company doesn't respect anymore the core values of their mission and why you adhere at the beginning to this team, you don't feel belonging anymore. Yeah, that's huge. Do you think, Virginia, that leaving the boat at the moment is the best thing to do? Good question.
Absolutely. And a really interesting process that you can all do at home is it's simple. You take a piece of paper and you just split it in half and just do pros and cons. What are the pros of me staying in this situation which feels sticky? And what are the cons? And maybe there's someone else you want to share this with, maybe your life partner or your significant other or your children, or anyone you want to have this conversation with. Maybe, with the person that you're with, or with yourself, or a coach, and see how you feel about it. And then if you see that the cons are taking over, and often we don't measure the emotional aspects of it. We're like, we look at the facts. We look at the tangible things, the material things, the financial aspects. We don't look at, what are the cons? I feel terrible. I'm not respected. I feel down all the time. I don't see my friends and family anymore. I'm tired. I'm uninspired. Like that's when you see that, though, you have to put them in. Put those in the cons, and it will kind of be, I feel when you do an exercise like that, it becomes so obvious that you can't ignore it anymore. So read it over and over again, and then it requires an exit plan. And a coach can support you with the exit plan. When it feels like the right decision, but you're afraid, then we can actually look at the wording and how to do that in a way that doesn't make you feel even more stressed out than being there. Because exiting can be very, very scary.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying there about making the pro and cons list, of making sure that you're including the emotional impact, because I do think that gets missed a lot, and I think that's one of the heaviest parts. And I understand that there are other factors that do need to be considered, but that emotional side of things gets forgotten or undervalued, I think, a lot.
Yes, time to give it the value it deserves.
Yeah. And which will, just to bring this full circle, help with that whole notion of burnout, right? When we're taking the emotional pieces of our decisions into consideration, I think it helps set us up in a way that I guess where we're living more aligned to what we want to do, and that physical or energetic tool isn't quite as great. So yeah. I think you may be frozen. So I suppose then, on that note, we'll see if Virginia comes back. But I just want to thank everyone for watching. Virginia and I will be recording a podcast. It's somewhere in the near future. I can't recall, but that will be coming out probably within the next 2 or so months. So if you're interested in checking that out, once that is published, just a second, I made a mistake. You can, Virginia's gone. Well, I was going to ask us where to connect with her, but I guess I will just take a stab at what she wanted to share and let you know. So if you're interested in following and getting a notification once Virginia's podcast episode is out, you can check out lindsaylapaquette.com/podcast, and you can sign up to receive notifications of each podcast episode. Virginia's here. Anna here is saying, just saying thank you to Virginia. So I will pass that along as she, I guess, is having some tech troubles. If you're interested in reaching out to Virginia for more information and to connect with her, I know she's very active on LinkedIn. That's where she and I had met. Her website here is virginialauzoncoaching.com. And I encourage you to go check it out and reach out to her if you're looking for somebody to support you through different transitions in your life. I know she's highly empathetic and a wonderful listener, and just really in tune with her clients and with people in general. It's a lot of what drew me to her when we first connected. So unfortunately, can't say goodbye to her directly, but I do appreciate your time tonight, Virginia. And David is also saying thank you. So thanks everyone for joining us yet again. Next week, I will be going camping. Finally, we usually camp all summer. We didn't this year. And so I am itching to get out in the woods, talking about ditching burnout culture. That's a big thing that helps me to kind of reset myself. And so yeah, I'm really looking forward to going camping. So we will not be doing a live next week because I'm taking part of the week off. And we will be doing one the following week, Wednesday, 6 p.m. with Tina Verghese, and we'll be talking about unconscious bias. And she has a lot of expertise in that area, does a lot of keynote speeches on it. And I'm really looking forward to having her join us here. So I hope you'll join us in 2 weeks, Wednesday at 6 p.m. So thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye.